Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Zero Sum Podcast. I'm Aaron Moog. I'm your host. Thank you so much for joining us. Really thrilled, excited, sort of nostalgic a little bit with our guest today. Joel Benge is somebody that's been in my life for a long time, and we'll get into it, but in cyber a long time. So first of all, thanks for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited, man. When you popped up in my LinkedIn DM, I was like, oh boy, blast from the past. This is going to be fun.
Here we go. So I was joking with you before we started that I think, I was looking back and we connected in 2008 on LinkedIn. So I just out of curiosity, I was like, how many people were on LinkedIn back then? It was like 33 million. And today it's 1.3 billion. So it's been a bit of a ride in the social media world. From a very small set of cyber to now, obviously, everybody. But why I wanted to have you on, besides being a fan and somebody who's read and consumed a lot of the material you put out over the years, is I don't think it's ever been a more in time to be a good communicator in our space. And you've written a book on the topic, which is behind you right there, which is Be a Nerd That Talks Good. You put out, everybody who wants to talk better should read that. You've had podcasts. I think you've been doing podcasts for as long as there's been podcasts. You've put out just a ton of awesome content that I've consumed over the years. And, I think you're a very important part of the sort of history of cyber marketing and branding and things like that. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure we'll get more into what you're doing day to day as we go. But I want to start here because this is somewhere I love to sort of think about is, this is a show about community and about our cybersecurity industry. I guess just starting there, like, where do you think we're at? How do you feel about where we're at? Do you wake up with dread? Are you waking up excited? Like, where's your head at with the community right now?
It's interesting to me because I'm not a traditional cyber guy, and I'll talk about my background maybe in a little bit. I was a practitioner, but then I've always sort of been in the human communicative side of it, and I see waves and cycles just kind of in the way the communities grow up around, in our industry. It's an interesting time, I think, just in media and in digital life in general, how, maybe this is like the way it felt in the 50s when we had like 3 TV channels and everybody got the same information. And, then as media and social media kind of fractured and split, within the cybersecurity community, for a while we had big players and they were commanding a lot of the conversation, and then a lot of, technology democratized, I guess I would say, the ability to do cyber, to build cyber, and to build communities. And then we got really fractured again. And we see it even in the products. Like, all right, we're a point tool. Now we're building a platform of point tools, and now we're building a platform that we want your point tool to be part of, but it's still our platform. And now we're moving into micro SaaS and these little things that do one thing at a time. And, vibe coding is enabling people, I'm no developer, no coder at all. I dabble, a little bit and have done in the past, and I'm building something we might talk about later. But for the people who have zero experience, even understanding technical stacks and things, they may be in the industry, but they don't understand everything that goes into building product. They're like, well, I can build my own product now. And I'm like, but can you? And so, and while I applaud that, and it's great to learn and it's great for discovering, that also is, I think it's a little indicative of I'm going to strike this out on my own. I'm going to do it myself. I want, people are doing a lot of the same thing, but they're doing it in their own, from their own perspective, which I think is cool. But it's also, are we getting back into the point where we're not collaborating, we're not sharing? Are we going to be back into walled gardens, or because now we're maybe all building on some of the same platforms, is that enough to provide the plumbing that's going to allow us to get back to where we need to play nicely with others again? So those are kind of the places that my head's at, is not just the fracture of community, but the fracture of platforms and what does it mean to do technology and then build communities around that technology.
Yeah, I think with the overwhelming amount of companies and money and interest flowing into our industry, I think, and we were talking about this before we started, just coming off of Black Hat and sort of the upcoming fall silly season of conferences, there's so much money being spent. And I'm not sure it's not really helping companies stand out the way I think it is, like they think it is. And when you talk to the people who consume security, it's chaos. Like they're like, I don't know, there's so many, and I get a million DMs and I get a million, there was a playbook that came along a few years ago, which was, content, right? Which is like put out content and people will find you and love you. And I think people in marketing overdosed on that drug. Like it became overwhelming. And it was like, let's just put words in the ether and then somebody will buy our stuff. And it doesn't really work anymore because everybody's doing that. Right.
Yeah.
So in this sort of era of, let's say like mega noise, like so much noise, it's overwhelming. When people, customers, CISOs, whoever comes to you and says like, how do I stand out? Where does your head go? Like right now, can you see a light at the end of the tunnel, or are you like, I don't know, it's all burning down. Who knows?
Well, the first thing I do with my clients is look at what they've got. And it's a good place to assess, like, do you have content? Do you have content that stands out? Is it on brand? I'll talk about kind of my mental philosophy about what makes good brand messaging and good content, maybe in a little bit. But I first start with like, are you starting from scratch? Because if you're starting from scratch and you're like, we want to be launching content in 4 weeks, I'll tell you, you should save your money. Maybe it would be helpful if I kind of peeled back and give you the bridged version of where I came from, because I think it informs the conversation. So my background is theater education and video games. And in the late 90s, before the dot-com bubble burst, I had a fork in the road. I was not doing so great in theater, but I had a job at a video game company. And I was like, I'm just going to drop out. I'm going to become an IT guy. So I put childish things away and work for video games. I guess that's not the way the scripture goes. But from there it was, I'm troubleshooting, I'm communicating technical problems. I'm interpreting technical problems, and I'm providing technical insights to non-technical people, basically, is what that's like being, in the help desk, as we know. And I went from that into systems engineering, and I want to build computers, and then I want to fix them, and I want to get into knock sock. And I was the guy before we ever had SIMs and data lakes and all that type of stuff. You're going to sit here and watch this screen for 12 hours, and if that line goes red, you pick up and call, first line engineering support. Like that was the level of, in the sauce that I was, and eventually got into compliance. And I applied to the federal government for a compliance position, and they looked at my resume, theater education, video games. I was an early podcaster. I worked for Nickelodeon right out of high school. And they said, do you want to be a communications guy? And I said, what's the difference? They said, well, compliance lives in Excel and communications lives in Word. This is the federal government after all. And I'm like, I'm a theater school dropout. I do word shit real good. So I became a communications person for the Department of Homeland Security's headquarters, CISO. That involved then coordinating across a broad bunch of components. They all had their own CISO shops. We were just trying to do policy. So there was a lot of coordinating policy across the department, writing memos up to senior leadership in Congress. And I got saddled with very early on the change your password as frequently as you change your underwear type of awareness, right? So it was all kind of coming through me. And I did that for several years and got a real knack for the bottom line up front human element of cyber communications. Then I jumped into a startup. I can talk about that. That's a whole nother episode. But out of that, I developed kind of a feeling for how, especially technology owners, because I was working for a very technical co-founder or technical founder, and practitioners overshare, over communicate, and they think that that's buying them credibility points, and that's buying them. It's almost like a zero sum game.
Sure, there you go.
If I throw all the data at you, I'm going to overwhelm you till eventually you'll just believe what I'm trying to say. And when the startup ran its course, I ended up in branding and marketing because I was a former cyber guy who knew communications. I had worked in the federal government, and the agency I was working for serviced a lot of defense contractors. So I was kind of like that unicorn in the middle, and that's where I took on a lot of my learning about what is good content, what is marketing, what is go to market, because I was now doing that on behalf of these nerds that I used to be. So we had a lot of cybersecurity companies. We had some internal governmental groups that I can't talk about that we were helping them with their communications. And I'm like, I'm on the outside now trying to help these nerdy companies and organizations advocate for themselves. But it's almost like they're abdicating the responsibility back to me. Right. So many of these companies, and this is what I think we're seeing in the marketplace, is they're getting a point where they have so much money, and a lot of these companies do, if they have money, that they don't even think they need to be involved in their marketing anymore. It's abdicating the responsibility. Make us look cool. Give us a cool brand. And the poor marketer, if they don't have the benefit that maybe I had, and there are some phenomenal cybersecurity creative firms. I'd split it into creative firms, branding firms, go-to-market activators, kind of like that's the way I look at it. There are really good cybersecurity focused ones, but because they specialize, they also then become almost a black box, and every company that goes through their doors is doing the same thing. And that's what I see is happening a lot. I didn't go to Black Hat this year. I was like, I know what it's going to be. And our conversation and what I've seen is pretty much confirms it. No differentiation. But a couple years ago, I walked around and I strip brand away. I strip what it looks like, and I'm looking at messaging. And when I see commodity messaging, I notice it everywhere. And, there was some of the larger players were spending hundreds of $1,000s on these big, gigantic booths, and the biggest words, which I would call like your headline, your top of mind, big ideas, were saying the exact same thing. And I made a tongue in cheek post on LinkedIn. I said, you got to stop copying each other's homework, and
Right.
that got a big laugh several years ago. Now I think so many companies who don't have a lot of the money are getting their hooks into some of these new technologies that we've got, and they're almost like doing the same thing, but they're abdicating out to the bots, right? So
Right.
I hate to tell you guys out there, I can tell that your content is Claude. You can just see it, and even a designer, if you don't have a human in the loop or a real design mind in the loop, we can all see. You might be putting out copious amounts of content, but it's your underwear showing, basically.
Right.
I guess I would say.
Sure. So it's interesting because like you mentioned, at the bottom of the market, there's the temptation to just AI go crazy. You just post with AI. And then at the top of the market, there's this like finely tuned, some of it's very beautiful. Like it looks way better than anything's ever looked in cyber. These brands come out of stealth looking like they've been doing it for 10 years, right? Like it's very polished, very beautiful design, saying nothing. Literally not a single word lands with me, but like it looks good. So, that's the top of the market, which the top of the market used to be very dry, but it was at least technical, right? Like, next gen firewall marketing from the original Palo stuff was very nerdy. It was like app control and know what your users do. But at least like I would walk by a booth, like, oh, I know what those guys are doing. I have no idea. And I think I'm pretty good at this. And I'm like, what the hell are you selling me? And so, that naturally leads to confusion in the market. But I guess, like, how do you fix that? Like, is it authenticity? Is it just a better process? Like, how do you stand out in the sea of sameness?
Yeah, I mean that is doing some self work and locking some stuff in early. And I think the challenge with some of these bigger top of market players is they've grown so big that they've lost focus of what they actually do and what they actually are. They're trying to become the everything box, and if you want to become the everything box, you have to speak non-specifically. Um, I worked with a client. This is not a cybersecurity company. They're a defense research park. And when I first did their audit and I looked at their tagline, and it was something along the lines of innovate, collaborate, take off, or something like that. And I was like, you know what? Your website may as well say live, laugh, love, because it tells me nothing about what you're doing. And if your headline and your big idea doesn't even, so there's a balance. The balance is putting too much into it, a la very early, we're a cloud-based identity access management solution that supports your compliance by using AI, right? That's not a big idea. That's a Gartner category and then some. Or we fix stuff, like, we prevent hacks. Okay, great. You and everybody else. And so you get to this point where it's very commodity or it's very cerebral. And so what I do is I try to start less with the words they're using, and I try to peel it back to meaning. So the way I do this is with a card deck. So this is kind of my shtick. I got tired of asking companies, what is your big idea, and getting the cloud-based identity access management solution. And I just started saying things like, what's something you want to change about your industry? What opportunity are you seeing that others don't? What or who do you advocate for? Three very different questions. And depending on the way they would answer, that would help me triangulate into whether they're cerebral, whether they're working on trust signals, whether they're, an emotional big idea. And that's sort of, it's like an Aristotelian approach. So liberal arts in me is coming in. Emotion, logic, credibility. There it is. That's a cheeseburger, by the way, because a stomach would have looked really weird on screen. Most companies try to shove so much cerebrally at you that you like I said, it's like a battle of attrition. If I keep giving you statistics and numbers and complicated things, surely you're going to see things the way I want you to see them, and you're just going to make the decision I want you to make. But what I advocate for is being really clear with every component that you want to share, whether you're exciting them or instilling some sort of emotion, whether you're delivering just enough information not to overload them, or whether you're doing trust signals. Oops, that's the wrong button. But that is kind of the approach that I take, which is first understanding your balance. And when you show them, like, hey, the first page of your website is like, you don't link your white paper on the first page of the website. You might link a blog or an announcement that's very exciting that says you have a white paper. But if you're putting white paper level content, you're never going to get that second click. So that's the first thing that I do. And then I take them through the cards and help them build out, again, kind of like a hierarchy of, I call it a minimally viable messaging platform. So one or two big ideas, a couple stories. Now this can work at that upper top of market, or it can work for a small company that's just discovering, but you have to be able to have the eye on all the balls, because if you have way too many messaging elements, you may not have enough value propositions, but you have too many stories. You're just basically spinning up a whole bunch of stories, but you're not providing any value exchange. You're not setting up this is what you're getting out of us. You may have a whole lot of use cases, you may have a lot of or case studies, but if you're not translating that to a value that the marketplace has, then all you do is bragging. And so what I do is I help them work through all of that. And then we look at all of the content that we do through that lens. And, there are many different levels and layers and different ways you can slice it, whether you're talking about like different markets or different product lines or whatever. But if you don't have a singular source of what I call first principles messaging, then all you're going to be doing is chasing messages in the marketplace. You're going to be reactive. Sometimes I go year to year. I could go from RSA to Black Hat, and the same company has got like two completely different ideas, and they're two different identities. And I get that the marketing people are trying to be cute and they're trying to do like maybe like from a campaign perspective, but there's nothing tying it back to the identity of the technology, the purpose, none of that stuff. And so that's what I focus a lot with the work that I do. And, this is not just even just for cybersecurity companies. This is like, if you're a researcher, you have to know what you're about, what objectives you have for sharing your research, but then you also have to do a similar exercise for the people you're presenting to. And so, I've sort of, I say that I don't do marketing. I've stepped kind of out of that cycle, and I'm kind of like the put me in coach first before you run up a whole bunch of bills, get yourself locked into a brand that you can't really inhabit. And so it's been a journey, but that's kind of what I see the industry needs from all levels. I would love to get the $20,000-$30,000 branding consulting. If there's any big companies out there that need some help, I'd certainly love to help you.
There are. I know for a fact there are.
But I find the best is working with smaller up and coming companies that are coming out of stealth. I mentor with several cybersecurity accelerators here in the DC metro area, because I like to see the ideas that are coming out. And sometimes you have to disabuse an early stage founder and go, what you're building is not what the market is looking for right now, or this whole piece isn't, but this piece is. And having been around as long as I have, I think I've got a good finger on the pulse for that. And so I like giving back to to the community, as we were talking, and really helping people with their messaging, even individuals.
So you have a small startup. Startup's a loaded term now because some of these startups have $180 million coming out of stuff. But like a regular old cybersecurity startup, couple people, they worked at some company, they learned some lessons, or they're coming out of NSA or Israeli units or whatever. Like, they have a legitimate background that sort of at least gives you a little gut instinct. They might know what they're talking about. Assuming their product is not dumb, which there's very little you can do about that. Marketing is a megaphone for a great idea, right? That like gives you eyeballs and attention on a great idea. But like that middle stage of like team and idea, that's good, into the world knowing about it, seems to be where a lot of these things go off the rails, right? Where they even maybe convince a VC that they, maybe they raise $5 million or $10 million. And then I see them have no idea how to get the market to care, right? And, they flood the market with AI content, or they, like you said, have 8 rebrands in 2 years. I'm like, I don't know what you do anymore. Give me like a little bit more. I would love to understand a little more tangibly. Like, if you're sitting down with those people, is it you go through the cards and you go like, let's find a voice? Like, I'm kind of using a generic term of like find your purpose, if you will, and then let me help you megaphone it. Is that where you feel like the value is for what you do?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is breaking their brains open a little bit, right? And it can be as simple as just saying, "Hey, what are you trying to accomplish with this headline? Are you delivering information? Are you inspiring them to want to dig in? Are you establishing trust?" And a lot of times they don't know, right? Or they sometimes I'll even have them print out content and go through with 3-color highlighters and just say, hey, you know what? The first thing you need is the self-awareness to know when to say when, and when to, pour the cheddar cheese on top of the broccoli, as it were.
Always.
Yeah, always. Oh, I love it.
It's my upper Wisconsin. That's always my answer. Always.
Always. But then it's sometimes it's calling the baby ugly. It's calling out and saying, "Hey, I'm in the industry and I don't know what you're talking about here." Or I'm in the industry and I know what you're talking about here, but you're taking, 3 lines to say one thing, and or you've got these companies that they've barely got customers and already they're trying to become the standard, and they're trademarking 3-letter acronyms. We're the only, ZTNA GCQ. It's like, yeah,
Right.
no shit, you're the only one, because nobody else is building that, and that's a brand. You're trying to build yourself up credibility wise by a brand name, as opposed to just really very plainly talking about what you do. So the workshop primarily that I do is like, hey, let's take. I'll say it this way: when people try to do marketing, they turn off their heart and their gut, and they say, "What should I say?" And that I think happens with like ChatGPT and Claude and stuff like that. They're full. They outsource it, and it becomes very commodity. So what I do is I'm looking for the things that go unsaid. So talk about where have you failed before in your development, and how did you overcome it. So that's like a card that I have called the bruises, and it's a story card. And it's like, if you can share a story in your content about what you tried before, then somebody may meet that content, and they may be in the middle of trying that, or they may be about to try that, and you've saved them some failure and some embarrassment, and now you've built some credibility and you've built some empathy with them. But those aren't the type of stories that founders want to share. They don't want to share the failures. They don't want to share vulnerability. But and I do think the industry for a while there was, 365 degrees, full visibility, 100% infallible. And the industry got a little humbled because of some things that happened. And I think we recognized that language wasn't useful. And so then we tried to go the full opposite and just be like straight and bland and technical. And there's something in the middle. I mean, you have to sell some sizzle to sell some steak. It's true. But if there's no steak underneath it, and so really what I do is I help, I'll say it this way: I link the sizzle to the steak. And it's a challenge because it requires them to change their behavior and change the way they see things. And I'll very frequently get a founder who just, they want to see it their way. And I can't help them. But if they're open to seeing, hearing from an outsider, hearing from someone with some experience, hearing from their own team. So the other thing that's great about the way that I do my workshops is I don't let people speak at the beginning of the workshop, where I'm literally throwing cards in front of them. Every 30 seconds you're answering a different card. And if we're in person, you're writing it down. If we're doing it, I'm building a platform now to be able to do this remotely a little bit easier. But the idea is it's quantity over quality. I want the first thing that comes to your head.
Yeah, just like go.
Yeah, and doing that across team members, bringing in customer insights. When we have these all, I say, out of your head and onto the table in front of you, you can start to see where maybe there are clusters of thought that aren't being articulated the same way. But if we can adopt the same language around that cluster of thought, it becomes a much stronger brand language. Sometimes the founders may find out that their development team is not seeing things the way that they're seeing it. And so that's not a marketing problem. It's an internal alignment problem. But if you don't have that figured out, you'll never get the product to the market the way you want it to. So, even what I do from an internal communications perspective, and just establishing, hey team, these are our value propositions. If you want to go out and start talking about a different type of value proposition, we need to bounce it against our first principles, so it doesn't look like maybe we're contradicting ourselves in the marketplace. or we're chasing, after the latest headline, which, we always tend to do in this industry. It's like a big, if it's not the Verizon data breach report, we all start talking about it the next morning. It's the latest, big model leak or something like that.
Yeah,
And then
all
for the
that
next
fucking
week and a
free stuff.
half, that's all we talk about. So you can stand out by not falling into the commodity news cycle if it's not relevant to you. Pick something else.
So in my mind, right, one of the ways that you stand out from having to weigh in on the news of the day is if you look at your sort of, mind, gut, heart matrix, the heart is the one that stands out to me the most as something that we're the worst at cyber, right? Like if I'm standing in front of somebody and they were, some sort of badass in their life, like, all right, I gut check, you kind of know what you're doing. And then they explain to me what they're doing. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That last part of heart is so dramatically missing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think that happens a lot, especially when there's sort of a hyper greed cycle, which we're in right now. But they're not connecting it with people. There's always that side of security, which is like the bad guys are coming to get you. Like, okay, but we have a common enemy, right? We're all looking at the enemy. Okay, fair enough. But like at an emotional level, like, what are you trying to say that connects with me at a human level? And one thing I've noticed, especially noticed as a Black Hat, and maybe part of this is because we're such a male dominated industry, but like we can't put people at the center of anything. We have to put these like fake anamorphic robot things, right? Like we can't just tell a story about Bob and I say Bob's ass. We have to like make it a skeleton or a robot or a superhero or whatever. We like if we had all of our commercials in a row, you'd be like, are there people in this industry or is this just characters? And I think part of that's a fear of like you said, sort of like connecting with it or showing failure or showing, maybe you aren't perfect. You don't have all the answers, but we're going to figure it out together. And so like putting yourself on the side of the table of the customer, when you find somebody that's struggling with heart, like with not some, and the stories in our industry are so fucking fake, right? It's like, I was sitting with the CISO at lunch and he said he needed my exact solution and everybody in the restaurant cheered, right? Like there's like that bullshit. But like, where's the heart come from? Like, how do you get to that point? That's the part I'm interested in.
I think it's really talking about the customers and their experience. So this is not a heart card, but maybe it should be, which is the advocate card. What or whom do you advocate for? And this is the example that I always use is like a managed service provider. They could say we're a managed service provider and we do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, yeah, so does everybody else. That's,
Big deal.
Strip away the colors and the mascot, and what are you? And I'll say, well, what makes you so special? Why do people want to work with you? And this, oh, well, it's our people. I'm like, no, every company's got people, so it's not that. And those are inward looking stories. But when you start to say, what or who do you advocate for? I was just doing a discovery session years ago with an MSP, and I was like, what's your best? Because they wanted to be the everything box. They wanted to be we can do every type of business. And they had mentioned that the bulk of their business comes from construction firms, small to medium mom and pop construction firms. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So why do you work with them? Oh, well, because, one, we spun out from one, so we understand that industry. But what we really believe, and the moment they say believe, you got to perk your ears up, because they said, we believe that those are the companies that need security the most because they're non-technical companies, but they're building, homes for Americans, or they're building for the future. And I'm like, in that story is your big idea. You're not a managed service provider. You're the security partner for mom and pop construction shops or whatever. And that's where you start to cast your big idea. Another really good one is like starting to talk about like second or third order benefits. So who benefits because your customer benefits? And if you can get into that headspace, and say, hey, look, I know I'm delivering a incident response platform to you, but the reporting that we're going to do is going to get the CFO off your back every quarter when he comes and asks to justify your spend because we have this thing in here. And so you're not really saying I'm solving your problems from a technical standpoint. You're talking about solving relationships, solving business friction. And I mean, this is it's not rocket science type advice. We've been saying this for years. But I think we kind of, especially in our industry, we're so heads down on the technology and the thing that the doohickey does, and we don't think about the people that the doohickey does for.
Right.
And that really, everybody wants to be an everything box, but the biggest advice in marketing is always niche down. So I don't just work with cybersecurity companies. It's where I came from. It's what I know the most. It's the place I'm most comfortable. But I work with lots of other types of companies. But people look at me and they're like, Joel is the nerd that talks good for cyber companies. And I'm like, and I'll happily wear that mantle.
Well, I always tell people, like, at least they think of you of something. Like, it's better than just like, who the hell is Joel? Like, that's not good. Like, I don't think that's a great spot to be in. And I do feel like there's like an intense amount of sort of FOMO in cyber, where if I do pick a lane, I'm going to miss out on these other things. And then you end up just saying nothing to nobody, right? You're just like, I solve all of life's problems. And I'm like, you are a 12-person startup. There's 0% chance you solve all of my problems. Like, pick a lane, be awesome at it, be empathetic, be authentic. And like, you have a shot at me remembering you. I mean, I got to tell you, man, I saw almost every booth at Black Hat and talked to hundreds of people inside and outside of the show. 3 companies I saw, like, I even remember. It just was not an impressive showing, partly because we're in this mania, right? And like, it doesn't matter what you do, you have to say AI. Like, like, you're a GRC platform, you're AI, you're a firewall, you're AI. Like, so like, there is a bit of like a mass hallucination going on. But when that calms down, which it will, like, we're going to come back to this mission-driven part of our industry, which is honestly my favorite part about cyber is we have a shared enemy. We have a mission. I always say, like, when I give talks and stuff, I like that our grandmas can use their phones to do online banking. Like, we did that. Like, the technology wasn't the hard part. It was making it safe in a lot of ways, right? And so, I love that that's been an output of our industry is people don't even think about it, right? But then I see other things, and it's like, there was a Onion headline that was like, Americans now spending 6 hours a day entering 6-digit codes into their phone, like, for all the passcodes we said though. Like, we also do dumb shit and make the journey difficult. But I genuinely love that part of security. But I got to tell you, a lot of people I meet now, when you're like, what's your mission? It's like, make money. Like, that's a tough thing to market. I mean, I guess there's a place for that, but like, we're not hedge funds, right? We're here to improve the world. So to that end, and I want to make sure we dive into this a little bit, because I think this will also be hyper relevant to people who I know listen. These messages can apply to internal, right? Like, you're a CISO, you're anybody in like, first of all, I fundamentally believe all nerds need to be able to talk good. We all need to sell. We all need to market. Like, that's how you get jobs. That's how you stay relevant. Are you? Yeah, there you go. But
buy my book. No,
buy the book. But also, like, just in the sense of you talking about it, how can people take these lessons and sort of, at least at some level, look at what they're producing and go like, hearts, minds, gut, am I getting it? Like, I'm making a presentation to my board. I'm a CISO. I'm trying to get budget. Am I getting heart, mind, gut? I got to say, most of the time, the CISO boards decks I see are only mind. And I'm like, do they care? I don't, like, you're selling this bad. So how do you sort of coach into the real world and go like, hey guys, like, if you do these things, your messaging is going to land a lot.
Yeah. Well, not to harp on the book, but it's not a marketing book, and it is kind of written to the mind of like assuming a product, but sometimes that product can be advocating for a technology decision, or you're doing a security brief, or you're trying to, you have something that you want to advocate for. And it really is slowing down. Quite oftentimes when we go to write an article, do a blog, create a brief, we start on page 1 and we sequence it out. And, we start from the beginning, move to the end. And I'm a big advocate for the pre-work and the pre-thinking and what are the things I want to accomplish. Maybe it's my liberal arts background. I look at things from like an arc. I want to start someplace and I want to end someplace. I don't just want to deliver information. And then the other thing that I say is, especially, I think this is the way Hemingway did it. It was, write drunk and edit sober. It's like, get all of your thoughts out, right?
Yeah.
But then you have to take a sober look at what you have, and you have to look at every single element. Let's take a deck for example. When you're giving a presentation, every single element on that screen, one, consumes some brain power that your audience has. They're literally using calories and glucose and burning them. The human brain was designed, when we go into cognitive overload, to shut down. I call that the blank stare moment, right? And so you have to prevent that overload. Because if you're the source of the overload, you're not going to win any friends. You're not going to influence people. And so being able to take a step back and just say, what is the purpose of this bullet? What is the purpose of this number? What is the purpose of this line? And then if you're presenting it, you've got to know it backwards and forwards, not to the point where it's so rehearsed that it comes off as what was a little kid in Up? Good afternoon. My name is Russell. I am a Will. You don't want to present like that. It's not rehearsed, but you have to know. You have to be in the minds of the people you're presenting to. A really good example of this was I attend a lot of like really early stage pitch meetings and community things around here. There's a really great one in the Baltimore area. Actually, it's national, called 1 Million Cups. And it's kind of like for people with very, very early ideas who just want to do practice pitches. So it's not like a pitch competition. It's the one that we do. There's like 2 pitches, and then and a lot of the people who are in the room are entrepreneurs and residents. They're startup founders themselves. They're program directors. So we tear apart their pitches in a friendly way. Yeah. And there was a guy who he had a statistic on the screen that was about. It was about literacy rates. So it was non-technical, but it was about literacy rates. And it was 47.9% of students are meeting the literacy rate. But when he presented that slide, he said over 50% of kids are failing, which is not the statistic he had behind him. Right. So immediately the theater school dropout non-math guy, is going, 47 point whatever is not over 50%. So I immediately was not paying attention to what he was saying. I was doing math in my head.
Math, yeah.
He had and I'm like, am I the dumb one? And he was pitching math tutoring too. So if you're pitching math tutoring, don't make your audience feel dumb. Anyway, I did tell him that jokingly afterwards.
No, it's good feedback, yeah.
And what he was doing was what so many technical presenters do, which is complicate the story and add and require the audience to do work and think. And he had another slide later. He goes, we have a 2-step process. And on the screen, it was 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was like, that's not a 2-step process.
Makes you crazy.
Makes you crazy. But we do this as cybersecurity marketing people all the time. We throw out statistics. We put statistics on a screen, never reference them. So why are we requiring the audience to do homework and process stuff that you're not even going to use in your presentation? And so this is kind of the inclination to throw everything at the audience, throw everything on the screen. Claude is horrible about this because I can tell your slides were done with AI because it will say the same thing 3 different ways. It'll say it in the headline, it'll say it in the footer, and it'll have a little capsule pill up in the right-hand corner, and they all say the same thing. Well, just say it once. And those are the types of things that are so easy to fix, but we become lazy as an industry that we're like, we don't even see them anymore because we understand the slide or the presentation or what we're trying to say. And we never take an opportunity to step back and say, is there cruft in here I don't need? Is there stuff that is unnecessary? Am I conflicting myself from one screen to another? And in order to do that, you have to have an idea of the full story. And not to keep hitting on this guy who was doing his presentation, but the other thing was he opened with a general statistic about inner city youth not meeting the standards, and then his audience, his primary or first beachhead customers were going to be affluent, upper level, college bound kids. And we pointed out that you can't open with a problem, go through this whole thing, and the thing that you're solving for is not that thing, which is another thing that we do in cybersecurity. Here's the Verizon data breach stuff, blah, 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 blah. My tool's got nothing to do with those statistics, but I'm going to use that to establish some credibility. So I think there's laziness that we do. There's, it's almost the opposite of imposter syndrome, which is not unhealthy ego that does exist, but the opposite of imposter syndrome is just assuming everybody else is on the same level as I am.
Right.
And we do that in this industry.
This is one reason that I love hearing you talk, because I start thinking about my life and when I get away from story, right? Because what you're talking about is storytelling, which is when you talk about blank stare, the way you avoid blank stare is tell great stories, right? And that can take the form of great jokes, great memes, great, impactful emotional things, funny things. Like you're talking about that guy. If you start a talk and saying, our kids are failing math, and here's what I'm going to do about it. That's a story. Like, that's a story I'm engaged with versus random stuff. I can't even remember last time I heard a good story in cyber. Like, I really can't. And I've sat through a bunch of startup bake-offs. I've gone to a million VC conferences ever. And like, it's always about them, right? The story. If they are telling a story, it's like, I was the so-and-so at this company, or I work for this military, and then here's why I'm awesome. Let me spend 20 minutes explaining why I'm awesome, and then 10 minutes with what my tech does. Thank you for coming. It's like, you did not engage me at all. And so that's a really good check even on myself of like, are you telling great stories? Like, are you connecting with your audience in a meaningful way? So that's really good. It's funny starting this podcast, right? Because it's like, what do I want the story to be? Like, what do I want when people listen to episodes? What am I trying to do? And, ultimately, I want to tell the story of cyber, right? I would love in 5 years, if somebody listened to all of these episodes back, they would get a story of where we're at right now. And we could be totally different in 5 years, or it could be better or worse. I don't know. But like, I look at this, I'm like, man, I would love to have a version of this from like when we met, 2008. Like, what was it? What were we all thinking about? Like, what was cyber like? Like, what were the stories we were telling each other? And it's a lot of it's sort of gone to history, but like, I love stories and I love jokes too. So I'll set up a punchline. But internally, right? So if you're thinking about somebody going to ask for a hire or a budget or a tool they want to buy, like, tell better stories, right? But like, is there a framework that you think about when you think about like what makes a story? Again, not like the Odyssey, although most stories are based on the Odyssey. But like, at the end of the day, like, so somebody wants to go get $1 million to build a new AI SOC and they need a story. Like, what's a framework you could point them at to say like, here's how you tell a good story?
You know what? Before the framework, and I hate to keep harping on it, is understand the environment and the minds that you need to change going into it. So, even like my pyramid, if you understand your brand, maybe you don't have maybe your company doesn't have a formal big idea, story, values, but if you know your company brand enough and you understand the mission, but not the mission, vision, values bullshit that we all put on our we bury
the real
on
mission,
the real mission, the real stuff. If your organization is strong in culture and has a good thing that you can point to say, hey, our objective is X, Y, and Z. this thing that I'm proposing is going to help us accomplish it by that. It's not, you're not going to sell it by, we're going to catch this many more intrusions. We're going to patch this much more quickly. You've got to be thinking again, the second, third orders of that. And then to the storytelling framework, I do think that the hero story is incredibly valuable. So a lot of people know about Joseph Campbell. He's the guy who wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces, who basically said, there's a general story arc. You can see it in Hunger Games, you can see it in Harry Potter, you can see it in Star Wars, all that type of stuff. But the biggest thing is, and we fail at this as cybersecurity people, which is, if you give this to me, I will save you and I will become the hero. And it's not, if you do what I want you to do, I become the hero. It's, I'm your Obi-Wan, I am your Dumbledore. If you you are the person who needs to succeed in your objective, Mr. CEO, CFO, board member, or whatever. And these are the paths that we can take, and you have to draw a path. It's a path with and a path without. And you say, these are the choices that are before us. As the guide, as the learned consultant, or whomever you are, my recommendation is this, and I will help you on that path to succeed. You're putting them up there as the hero. I think that's one of the best frameworks you can do when you're trying to persuade someone to make a decision. But a story doesn't have to be that epic long story. It can just be as simple as like, and now my card thing is broken again. I broke it. I've got a card in the system, which is the hard part, which is like, why do we keep bouncing against this problem? What is the thing that's keeping us from succeeding, and how can we go around it? And call it Stoic philosophy, call it the obstacle is the way, or whatever the pop culture stoicism is. If you can identify a problem and use that problem as an opportunity, turn it into an opportunity, and make whomever you're trying to persuade the hero and the person who comes out smelling like roses on the end, 9 times out of 10, they'll go with you. But you can't do it through, here's the research, here's all the reasons, here's yada, here's, right? So starting with getting them emotionally invested, getting them nodding, not talking about the technology. I guess if you're at a board presentation and you've got a very limited amount of time, you better be good at that. But I think people who reach those levels are there for a reason. And if they're there to succeed, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think like one of the most toxic things that's happened to not just cyber, but American business is we've turned the CEOs into the heroes, right? Which I mean, about old school, I don't remember that being a thing until recently. Like, I never knew who the CEO of Coca-Cola is, and I never cared, right? Like, I never, like, I kind of abstractly knew who Phil Knight was, but like Nike is about their customers and the athletes, right? Or even like people idolize Steve Jobs, right, as this like CEO god, but nobody advocated for users more than he did. Like that was his obsession, right? Was like the school teacher, the plumber. Like if you really read or listen to what he talked about, it wasn't about Steve Jobs. He was using his power to get what he wanted for them, but that's what made him great. Now it's like, make a movie about me. I'm the CEO. And it's like, well, okay. But like the customers matter at some point here. And I have to say, like in cyber, we've really fucked that up. Like, I could talk to 100 companies in a row and almost nobody mentions customers. Like it's just as like the hero of the story. It's their marks to be taken down to get money into my pocket. Like, and it's not malicious. It's just the way that the world's structured, right? Mm-hmm. It's also why you see 90% of cyber news is like fundraising.
Yeah.
Like I raised money and it's like, who cares? It's the ultimate example of a hero's journey I don't give a shit about. Right. Exactly. It's like the money that you raise, like good for you. I'm happy that you have money and I'm happy there's money coming aside, but that's not a reason to care about your brand. Like even if they came out and said, we raised money to do X. And like, this is our mission. Like, we are here to solve this problem for you. The money is a means to the end. I at least would listen. But that's not the headline. The headline is company raises money to do what? Yeah. And I'm fairly convinced they don't even know. But like, I just think we could do way better. And I don't know if this is an American business problem or just a cyber problem. I'm guessing it's more of an American business problem. But like, I would love us to get better at that. But I think internally, like you're talking about, like maybe you only have a minute. In a minute, you can align what you're trying to do to a value that exists. Like, I was talking to a buddy the other day who had a big security issue, and he works for one of these like luxury hotel kind of resorty sort of things. Their entire ethos is removing stress from rich people. Security aligns perfectly with that. Like, getting your shit breached creates this like friction point for these $5,000 night hotel rooms. Like, it's really important. Like we are trying to de-stress in a situation for stressful people. Like, having great security matters. I'm not telling a story outside of that. I'm just aligning myself to that story. It's like, we're here to serve the wealthiest people on the planet. They care very much about being hassled. Let's remove the hassle. I need $1 million for my security program.
You don't want those guests. You don't want those guests putting those 6-digit codes in more than once.
That's what I'm saying.
If that.
Build it without that. And, beyond breaches are their own animal and they suck. But like, friction matters and outcomes matter and user experience matters. And like, I think we are getting away from that, not to get too much on my soapbox. But so if a person is out there, to kind of put a bow on this, if there's a person out there who is thinking about this and maybe struggling, like I was telling you earlier, like in my career, I've been in this 27 years. This is the first time that I feel like an average employee is more scared of their company than they are of the bad guys, right? Like when they wake up in the morning, the uncertainty comes from like the fear of being laid off or big business changes or getting fired so somebody can hit a number. And so this becomes even more important, right? Because like at the end of the day, you don't communicate with the threat actors. It doesn't matter as much, but you do communicate internally. Is that something that you can help? Like if a CISO is like, or a team's like, I need help, like, can they ping you and like, Joel, we need some help? Are you willing to do that type of help?
Absolutely. And I've done similar things with hiring where I'm not doing it at the public brand, but I'm helping an internal site. This was specifically a cybersecurity unit, align their hiring messaging with the brand messaging, but make it unique enough so that it attracted the people that they wanted to hire, who were very specific and they were a little bit outside of the corporate culture, I would say. They had a challenge where they weren't aligned with the corporate culture and helped them with that. But yeah, cool. I do free 15-minute vision checks just to be like, hey, what do you bump it up against? What are you having problems with? I'll happy to talk to anybody, and I'm making a whole lot of more resources available for free too. So first introduction and chapter of the book are free. You don't even have to put in your email address. Nice. And I'm actively looking for people who want to do some early adopting in some digital stuff that I'm doing. So I got courses coming, because my whole idea of this is to help the nerds talk better on their own behalf and not have to, shell out for marketing until they're ready, or so I'm a big advocate for teaching a man to fish, and that's not by sending bad emails with dirty links.
Excellent. Yeah, man, I'm going to take you up on that because I have some stuff that I want to do better messaging around, including this pod. But everybody should follow you on LinkedIn, of course, or connect with you, or you're a part of our community, so you're very easy to find. I think if you type your name in, you're the only one that comes up, at least in my feed. I have to say, like, I appreciate what you do for the community. I appreciate that you are giving value away, like even chapters of the book and stuff. Like, that's something I harp on a lot. Is like, you got to give a little to get a lot. So that's awesome. I definitely think in this era of fear, which I'll kind of call it, like AI is coming and people don't really know what to do with it. We're all, in this job insecurity world. And then, I think a lot of people wake up in the morning and go, oh God, I'm part of 5,000, 6,000 different security companies all at the same trough. Like, how do I stand out? These are all incredibly important things. And as somebody who does go to market, I can promise you a great story will change the course of your company. Like, if you can find it, it really does matter. Now you have to stick with it, which is part of the secret too. Is you can't find it and then change it a week later. And I would say like patience is part of this equation too, right? It's like you got to stick with it. People aren't going to respond to it immediately. Like you have to build over time. So that's I think a big part of it too. So they can find you on LinkedIn. Do you have a website too? They can find you at?
People can find me by going to nerdthattalksgood.com. It's .com official. That forwards over to Message Specs, which is the corporate brand, but it's all
corporate
me.
Brand.
So
which I'm sure has a great story. I'm positive of it because I know you're good at this. Man, I can't tell you how great it is to see you again and hear from you. I massively encourage everybody to follow your materials and your pods and your books. And I know I get value out of it. Even if you're not selling, I promise you're selling. Like we're all selling all day. You want to build an influencer brand. You want to build your own pod. You want to build your own cyber brand. You want to get money internally for your projects. Like learn how to tell great stories. I think is so important. So thank you so much for being here and spending some time with us today. Sir, I'll see you soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good to see you again, man.
All right, bud.
Let's not let it be 25 years till we talk again.
Promise it won't be. All right.